He was just a single dad. But that day, he wasn't facing his past. He was stepping into someone else's future. If stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes, the strongest new beginnings start with someone choosing to stay. No one expects the janitor to be the one holding a child like he's the only steady thing in a crumbling world. The sound of splashing water filled the garden patio, echoing with the kind of laughter that didn't belong in a corporate household. Julian Brandt crouched by a large plastic tub, holding a garden hose in one hand, while the toddler in front of him, 2-year-old Leo, squealed and kicked, sending droplets flying like summer rain. Julian smiled without thinking. He looked ridiculous in his oversized navy uniform, sleeves rolled up, arms freckled, damp, and tired. But none of it mattered. Not when Leo looked at him like that. Like he was safe. Like he was seen. And then came the voice. Sharp, cold, and cracking through the air like thunder in a blue sky. "You're hosing down my son like a street mutt." Julian froze, the hose still running in his hand. The voice didn't need a name. It was unmistakable. Amelia Becker, the CEO, the woman who built her empire with a spine of steel and a heart no one had ever seen beat. She stood rigid at the edge of the patio, heels dug into the stone, her tailored suit immaculate except for the tension etched in every line of her face. Julian stood up slowly, turned off the hose with deliberate calm, and placed it beside the tub. Leo blinked up at his mother, unbothered, still clutching a foam dinosaur, unaware of the storm gathering around him. "He got messy," Julian said, his voice level. "He wanted water time." Amelia's jaw clenched. He was scheduled for occupational therapy and then language development by now. Not this. Her hand waved at the tub like it was a biohazard. Julian didn't flinch. "You weren't home?" he asked. "I said yes." The air snapped like it might break. "You were hired to clean," Amelia hissed. "Not to parent. Not to entertain. And certainly not to emotionally bond." She couldn't even finish the sentence without her voice cracking slightly. Leo, still giggling, splashed Julian again, a stream of water hitting the front of his pants. Julian didn't react. He crouched, wrapping the toddler in a towel, his movements practiced and gentle. He remembered water time, Julian said softly. He said his dad used to do this. Said, "No more. Mommy hates mess." Amelia's shoulders twitched almost imperceptibly. Julian stood up again, holding Leo like he belonged in his arms. "You left him with me. I didn't ask for that, but I showed up." Silence. A silence that rang louder than the accusations. Then she spoke, quieter now, but still ice. "You're dismissed for the day." Julian didn't argue. "Sure," he said, stepping back, handing Leo to the stunned nanny who had just appeared. "But maybe ask your son if he's done with me." Amelia said nothing. She just watched. And that silence stayed long after Julian had walked away. That night, Amelia couldn't sleep. The image of her son laughing in someone else's arms haunted her like a ghost. She stood in her sleek, sterile kitchen, untouched espresso cooling beside her as her assistant, Laura, read through a file on her tablet. "Julian Brandt," she said, 37, former civil engineer, designed award-winning community housing. Widowed. Wife died during childbirth. No criminal history. Took on janitorial work after walking away from his career 3 years ago. Amelia flipped through the pages. Degrees. Photos. A newspaper clipping. One picture showed him holding a child not his own with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Why a janitor?" Amelia asked. Lara's voice softened. "Maybe because grief doesn't care about titles." Amelia looked out the window, where the patio tiles still gleamed under the moonlight. She hated how her son had leaned into Julian like he was home. Hated it even more that it made her feel something. She didn't tell anyone she cried that night. The next morning, the new child specialist arrived. On paper, she was perfect. On instinct, she was not. Leo screamed when she touched him, thrashed when she tried to guide him toward the bath. "This is normal," the woman said coldly. "Children resist transition." Amelia watched her son from the doorway, frozen by the same helplessness she fought her whole life to overcome. Leo was trembling. His voice cracked as he sobbed. "No water. No laughing. She doesn't laugh." The specialist sighed. "Ma'am, if we don't enforce boundaries, get out." Amelia snapped. The woman blinked. Excuse me. I said leave. Now. Amelia knelt beside her son, her designer blouse useless against the water sloshed onto the floor. She didn't know what she was doing, but when she reached into the tub and really splashed, it made Leo pause. Did you hear that? She whispered. I think a water monster lives here. Leo's sniffles turned into cautious giggles, and when she splashed again, he joined her, not just with hands, but with his whole heart. Laughter echoed through the tiles, filling spaces she didn't know were empty. But as the water dripped down her face, Amelia realized something chilling. Her son's joy didn't come from her. It came from a man who was no longer in the house. And when she tucked Leo into bed that night, his small voice pierced her. Can we find Water Daddy again? Amelia stood there, silent, because she didn't know how to say the truth. She didn't know where Julian had gone, or how to bring him back. The rain came suddenly, like a warning. Dark clouds rolled in without asking for permission, drenching the stone paths and filling the air with electricity. Amelia stood by the window of her home office, arms crossed, eyes scanning the gray blur beyond the glass. Her phone buzzed. Lara's voice crackled through. We've got a situation. Leo's missing. The words sliced through her like a blade. Amelia didn't reply. She ran, down the stairs, past stunned staff. Her heels skidded on wet marble as she pushed through the back doors into the storm. And there he was, tiny, soaked, shivering, sitting in the middle of the garden with nothing but a toy bucket beside him and rain plastering his curls to his forehead. Leo, she gasped, falling to her knees, arms wrapping around him. He was freezing, lips blue. His small voice trembled, barely audible over the storm. Water time, waiting for Daddy Julian. Her heart cracked open. You're freezing, she whispered, wrapping him in her coat. Why would you dash? But she already knew. He wasn't playing. He was hoping the man he trusted would return if the ritual was repeated. Back inside, chaos erupted. Towels, warm water, emergency calls. The pediatrician arrived with a grave face. Fever's climbing. Keep him hydrated. Watch for signs of delirium. Amelia nodded through the instructions like a soldier under fire. But nothing prepared her for the moment Leo looked at her through half-lidded eyes and whispered, Was I bad? She stayed at his side the whole night. The room buzzed with machines, but she barely noticed. She sat motionless, fingers gripping his hand like it was a lifeline. At one point, she found herself whispering into the darkness. Julian, I need you. She hated how natural it sounded. She hated even more that she meant it. But he didn't come. Not that night. Not when Leo cried in his sleep. Not when Amelia opened the sketchbook Julian had left behind in the garage. Pages filled with dreams for shelters, safe spaces, a better world. Somewhere inside, she found a note scribbled in pencil. Homes don't heal people. People do. The next morning, the fever broke. Amelia wept. Not dramatic tears, not the kind that sought attention but quiet, raw sobs into her son's hair. He opened his eyes, blinked slowly, and whispered, He didn't come. Amelia nodded. But Mommy stayed. He was too tired to reply, too tired to smile. But she saw something shift. A thread of safety, maybe. Later, as she stood alone in her office, she opened her contacts, scrolled until she found the number Laura had buried in his file. She hesitated only once before pressing call. It rang once, twice. Then, Julian Brandt. His voice. Steady, careful. She swallowed. It's Amelia. A pause. I figured. Leo got sick, she said. He went outside. In the rain. Looking for you. The silence was a wound between them. He thought you'd come. Julian exhaled softly. Is he okay? He's recovering. Another pause. She steadied her voice. I shouldn't have let you go. You didn't, Julian said. I left when I realized I wasn't welcome. Her chest tightened. I was wrong, she said. About everything. About control. About safety. About parenting. She almost choked on the last word. Julian didn't respond. Not at first. Then, do you want me to come back? Her voice cracked. Not as staff. Not as a shadow. Just as someone who stays. Another pause. Then he said, I'll think about it. The line went dead. She stood frozen, phone still in her hand, unsure if that was a beginning or the end. But deep down, she knew some people don't knock twice. If Julian came back, she had one chance, and she couldn't mess it up. 3 days passed. No answer. No Julian. Amelia kept checking her phone as if staring at his number long enough would force him to reappear. But it didn't work like that. She returned to her routines, or at least the shell of them. Board meetings came and went. Emails pinged unanswered. Staff tread lightly. Leo had stopped asking about water time, but his laughter had vanished with it. He followed Amelia around the house now, quiet, as if afraid she'd disappear too. Then one afternoon, Laura stepped into the office, lips tight, but eyes hopeful. "He's here," she said. "Outside." Amelia blinked. "Julian, with something you need to see." Amelia stood so fast her chair rolled into the wall. She didn't know if she was furious or afraid, but she moved. Out in the garden, the rain had stopped, but the ground was still soft, patches of earth damp and glistening. Julian stood there in a gray hoodie, jeans, and boots splattered with dirt. His hands were calloused, and beside him lay a long cylindrical case. "I wasn't going to come back," he said before she could speak. "I thought what I had to offer wasn't wanted." Amelia didn't interrupt. Julian unrolled the case on the patio table. Inside, blueprints. Not for a high-rise. Not for a shelter. A home. A modest one. 2 bedrooms. An open kitchen. A wraparound porch. A garden. "This," he said quietly, "was the house I designed for her. For Lenny, his late wife." Amelia stared. "Why are you showing me this?" Julian met her eyes. "Because I think I've stopped mourning what I lost, and I'm ready to build what's still waiting." Amelia felt the wind shift around them. She stepped forward slowly, fingers grazing the edge of the blueprint. "I don't know how to build anything without needing to control it." Julian's voice didn't waver. "Then start by not holding the hammer. Just hold the plans." There was a beat of silence. "I want to build something with you," she whispered. "Not a business. Not a performance. Something messy. Something human." Julian looked down. "I'm not a replacement, Amelia. For Leo's father. For anyone." "You're not," she said firmly. "You're something else entirely." He nodded slowly. Then softly, "Okay, then let's build something that doesn't need walls to be real." That afternoon, they began sketching in the dirt. Not literally not yet, but with words, ideas, memories. Leo joined them, barefoot in the grass, watching curiously. Julian taught him how to hold a ruler. Amelia helped him trace lines in the soil with a stick. It felt ridiculous. It felt perfect. For the first time in years, she let her hands get dirty. And that night, she tucked Leo in with a story, not one from a book, but one she made up on the spot. About a house that had no doors because no one ever wanted to leave. Leo blinked up at her, smiling sleepily. "Is that our house?" he asked. Her voice caught. "It will be one day. But peace doesn't last forever." The next morning, Amelia found a white envelope on her desk. No name. No return address. Inside, photos. Blurry. Zoomed in. One showed Julian holding Leo in the garden. Another him sitting at the kitchen table. And the last Amelia, smiling as he handed her a coffee mug. On the back of that photo, in red ink, "He's not who you think he is." Amelia stared at the photos like they might burn through her skin. She read the message again. "He's not who you think he is." The words were jagged, ugly, intrusive. Her first instinct was denial. The second, panic. She flipped the pictures back and forth, looking for a clue. A watermark. A signature. Anything. Nothing. Just grainy stills of private moments that no one should have had access to. She grabbed her phone and called Laura. "Did anyone come in today? Anyone not on the regular staff list?" Laura hesitated. "No one. Security logs are clean." Amelia lowered the phone, pulse pounding. Someone was watching, and they didn't like what they saw. Later that night, after Leo had gone to bed, she sat alone in the kitchen, the photos spread across the table. Her fingers hovered over her phone. Should she call Julian? Warn him? Accuse him? She hated how easily doubt had crept in. She had trusted him with her son, with her heart even, but what if there were things he hadn't told her? What if the past he walked away from had followed him? She picked up the photo of him and Leo in the garden. Julian's expression wasn't fake. It was tired, honest. That look on Leo's face? It couldn't be staged. Still, the fear wouldn't leave her. She texted Laura one word, background, then added, dig deeper. The next day, She met Julian by the site they'd unofficially chosen to build the community home. He was already working, sleeves rolled, dirt under his nails, pencil behind his ear. "We had a break-in," she said plainly. His hands froze mid-measurement. "What?" "No one came inside. But someone left these." She held out the photos. Julian didn't touch them at first. When he did, he looked at them for a long time. No expression, no flinch. Finally, he said, "It's not the first time someone's tried to rewrite my life." Amelia watched him closely. "What aren't you telling me?" He exhaled. "When Lenny died, there was media, attention, sympathy for a while. But when I refused to sell the blueprints for profit, when I turned down endorsements, they turned. Said I was wasting my genius, abandoning potential." His mouth twisted bitterly. "Some people don't forgive you for choosing quiet over legacy." Amelia was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Do you have enemies?" "Anyone trying to protect their own narrative might not like mine," he said, "especially if mine's louder." She nodded. "Then we do this smart. Carefully. No sudden moves. No press. We keep building, but we protect what matters." Julian looked at her, really looked. "You believe me?" "I don't believe gossip," she replied. "I believe what I see. And what I've seen is a man who never flinched when my son cried, and never pretended to be anything other than who he was." He nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed cautious. Something in him had closed, just a little. She noticed, and it scared her. That evening, Laura returned with more than Amelia had asked for. A file. Detailed. Sharp. Not just about Julian, but about someone else. Someone Amelia hadn't thought about in months. Her ex-husband, Leo's biological father. And on the very last page, tucked under legal correspondence and old court documents, an old email thread, forwarded from a private investigator she'd once fired. The subject line, "Tracking the engineer. He's still in town." A date, a name, a payment. And it wasn't Julian who had hired the PI. The walls she had so carefully built were starting to crumble. Amelia stared at the file like it had teeth. Her ex-husband Daniel, the man who had vanished from their lives when Leo was just months old. He hadn't so much walked away as disappeared into his own ego, trailing lawsuits and half-built ventures behind him. She had spent years cleaning up his messes, paying off silent settlements, rebuilding her name from under his shadow. She thought she was done with him. But there it was, in black and white. Daniel had hired a private investigator months ago, the same one who had trailed Julian before Julian ever set foot in her home. This wasn't a coincidence, she realized. This was a setup. But why? Why spy on the janitor she barely noticed at the time? She needed answers, not guesses. She waited until Leo was asleep, until the house was quiet, and then she called Julian. "Can you come over?" she asked. He paused. "Now, please." When he arrived, she was in the living room with the file open on the table. No preamble. "My ex has been tracking you." Julian's face didn't move. Not at first. Then he exhaled and sat down, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to warm them. "That explains a few things." "Did you know?" she asked, voice low. "No," he said, and something about the way he said it made her believe him. "But I figured someone was watching. I've seen the same black SUV twice this week near the site." Amelia's stomach turned. He wants something. He always does. Julian leaned forward. "Do you think he knows about Leo?" Her eyes darkened. "Legally? No. He gave up all parental rights. He didn't want the responsibility." Julian nodded slowly. "Then what does he want?" She shook her head. "Control. Power. He doesn't care about Leo, but he might see you as a threat. A man close to his son. A man I—" She didn't finish the sentence. Julian raised a brow, but said nothing. "He's probably watching us right now," Amelia muttered. "Which means we need to make a choice." "Run," Julian said, only half joking. She gave him a thin smile. "Fight, but the smart way. I need to meet him. Alone. Find out what he knows." Julian's jaw tightened. "I don't like that plan." "Neither do I," she said. "But I don't like being played even more." 2 days later, they met. In a cafe tucked away in the city-neutral ground. No cameras, no staff she knew. Daniel strolled in like he owned the place. Slick hair, expensive watch, false charm. "You look well, Em," he said. "Don't." Her voice was sharper than she intended. He held up his hands. "All right, straight to business. I hear your janitor has quite the resume. So you've been watching him. And you, he added with a smirk. Hard not to when my son's calling some guy daddy and splashing around like a fool. Emilia's eyes narrowed. You gave up the right to comment on anything he says. Maybe, Daniel replied. But courts love stories, and I've got one hell of a narrative. Single mother, unstable home, strange man living on the property, emotional attachment to a minor. You see where I'm going. Her blood ran cold. You wouldn't. Try me, Daniel whispered. You built your brand on control, Em. But all it takes is one whisper of scandal to watch it fall. I don't even have to win custody. I just have to make noise. Emilia leaned in, voice venomous. What do you want? He smirked. Partnership. I want in on your new project. The one you and your architect janitor are building. Let me put my name on it. Front the PR, make it ours. She stared at him. Or I make it messy, he said smoothly. Your call. Emilia stood slowly. You always were a parasite, Daniel. But this time, you picked the wrong host. She turned and walked away, her pulse in her ears, her hands trembling. And as she exited the cafe, stepping into the sunlight, she realized with a jolt someone was following her. She didn't run. She turned. The footsteps behind her were light, quick, and too steady to be a coincidence. Emilia slowed, pretended to check her phone, then caught a glimpse in the mirrored glass of the bakery window beside her. A man hood pulled low, sunglasses, holding something under his jacket. Too tense to be casual. This isn't Daniel's style, she thought. He manipulates from offices and lawyers' chairs, not shadows. This was different. Cruder. She stepped forward, quickly, pulling into a crowd, weaving through pedestrians with sharp instincts she hadn't needed since her early startup days. At the end of the block, she ducked into a bookstore, heart pounding. She didn't look back until she was sure she wasn't being followed. Later that night, after Leo was asleep and the lights were low, she told Julian everything. From the threat in the cafe to the man in the street. I think Daniel isn't working alone, she said. Someone's feeding him, or being paid to watch. Julian rubbed his temples. He's trying to scare you, pressure you into giving up the project. It won't work, she said. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not building for profit. I'm building for Leo, for kids like him, and for you. Julian froze. For me? She looked up at him. You taught me how to stay, Julian. How to listen. How to build something that feels like home, not just something that looks good in photos. You changed everything. Julian sat beside her, quiet for a long time. Then he took out the sketch he had tucked away months ago. The one for the small house, 2 rooms, open light, joy in the margins. It was never meant to be mine alone, he said. But I stopped believing anyone else would want it. Emilia reached over and placed her hand over his. Then let's finish it together. The next morning, they returned to the construction site not with fanfare, but with purpose. Chloe arrived with Leo, who squealed when he saw Julian and immediately ran to him, muddy boots and all. The wind felt warmer that day. The foundation had cured, and as the first beams were lifted, they didn't just begin a building. They began again. Word of the project spread faster than expected thanks, ironically, to Daniel's noise. But instead of scandal, the public saw something real. A woman once defined by headlines now knee-deep in soil. A man who walked away from prestige to raise his son with dignity. A little boy who laughed again. Donations poured in. Volunteers showed up. And one afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Clarissa held the first community meeting in the half-finished hall. No suits, no script, just chairs in a circle, hands that had built, healed, stayed. She looked around, voice steady. This isn't just a building. This is proof that starting over doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. That night, after Leo fell asleep between 2 half-colored picture books, Julian and Emilia stood on the unfinished porch watching the stars blink into view. You think we'll finish it? She whispered. We already did, Julian replied. Because Leo didn't need the walls. He needed the people inside them. She smiled. He still calls you Daddy, Julian, you know. He doesn't have to, Julian said. I show up anyway. Emilia nodded, eyes shining. And I won't run anymore. He turned to her. Good. Because I finally stopped. Their hands found each other, naturally. No grand promises. No declarations. Just 2 people who had every reason to quit but didn't. And sometimes, that's how homes are really built. If this story made you pause, breathe, or even smile, don't go just yet. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. Because the world needs more reminders that staying, loving, and rebuilding is the bravest thing you can do. Thank you for being here. See you in the next story.